Hello and welcome to Fringe Legal Edge. This is a experimental segment that aims to speak with leaders and experts around all sorts of things that will give your practice an edge. And today I am joined by Robin, who hopefully can hear us. And if you can, Robin, you are on mute, so you may have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for joining me. I can see you as well. Perfect. So Robin Nissenson, and I apologize if I completely butchered your last name, is the co-founder of Really Good Innovation. He's joining us live from Switzerland, and he co-founded this resource that collates about 200 or more items to support innovation. That includes tools, templates, stories, and so much more. I came across Robin very randomly because I saw his extremely successful launch on Product Hunt. And yeah, I decided to reach out. This is actually the first time Robin and I are speaking. So we'll see which way the conversation goes. So Robin, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Abhijit. Thank you also for introducing me. And I'm actually in Copenhagen, so in Denmark at the moment. I'm doing a master in innovation and entrepreneurship there at Copenhagen Business School. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start. And there's a whole bunch of things I'm sure we'll cover today. But let's start with really good innovation. So tell us a bit more about what it is, and actually what was the story behind it? What prompted you to get started with it?
Yeah. So as you said, it's basically a resource collection of innovation resources. And we started, I started with a friend of mine who studies the same master degree at Copenhagen Business School. And I mean, we study innovation and entrepreneurship as our master degree. So we learn a lot of different kind of frameworks and strategies and tools and whatever. And we felt like, why isn't it just very easy to have one platform where you can go and you just find all of this and much more, and a lot of inspiration for new businesses, right? Because we also often had exercises in class where it was about ideating for new business ideas, and in the end it always comes down to having knowledge, having inspiration, different examples that come to your mind and that you connect to different sources in order to get to new ideas. So we just wanted to have one platform where all of this is kind of combined, to help people, just maybe to inspire them or to give them insights into some specific parts of innovation, like what is open innovation, what is disruptive innovation, what differentiates certain kinds, maybe also for people in bigger corporations who are kind of entrepreneurs and try to disrupt a company from within. We're basically trying to build up this platform. And
how long has it been? And as I said, this is the first time we're speaking, so the audience to this show are likely going to be individuals that are either in large corporations, so whether they are within the legal teams of in-house legal teams or corporates or law firms, and often with thousands of individuals, as well as some smaller practices, which is going to be anywhere from one person running a law firm, a law practice, all the way to sort of 10, 50 people. And especially on the smaller side of things, they need to be more agile, right? There's a finite marketplace for work. So everyone is kind of competing for the same kind of work. And innovation is one way to stand apart. But as you started to think about this project, actually, I'm curious, how long did it take you to put the website together, collate all of these resources?
Yeah, I mean, we started talking about it, and then the big thing that actually got us starting, right, was to actually also find a person who had the technical knowledge to do the platform itself and to work with that person, and to find somebody who would also find this an interesting experiment and try to pay for it, right, to kind of, at least for the technical part, because for the rest, we don't have any expenses. But we started back in October. So it's just like what is that? 8-9 months?
Like 8 months, yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, it's just going. It's also not something that we try to do within a month or so, right? It's an evolving process, and we tried out different things. We talked to different companies, what they would find interesting. We tried to talk to the people who are signed up on really good innovation to find out what they most care about.
Yeah.
And then we try to go in one direction or the other. So originally, and what we also have on our website, as you said, we have a lot of tools, stories, podcasts, videos about innovation. We also have one section that has innovation consulting firms, and actually also a comparison page where you can compare different innovation consulting firms with each other. That was kind of one of the original thoughts also. If you are a company who often need consulting firms, if they want to innovate, or at least they want to have some guidance in that. Like, who would you go to? What are their experiences? Who did they work with? And instead of Googling all the ones, you can just go on really good innovation
Find one place,
and see the comparison. So that's one thing. And
And
now we really focused also a lot on the tool side, because we felt a lot of people also want kind of innovation management software. So we tried to collect a lot of these.
Yeah, and I mean, so there's a couple of things I'll call out on the website. So for anyone who's listening and wants to check it out, it's reallygoodinnovation.com. It was interesting. I like the quiz that you have on there, right? What kind of innovator you are, what kind of innovator are you? So it's worth doing that. But the tools are really helpful. The templates are really helpful because for a large part, it sort of helps you sort of go back to basics. And certainly my experience in speaking to individuals, whether they call themselves innovators or not, I certainly would, has been a lot of them have gotten into that role accidentally, right? They there needed to be a purpose for what they had to do, and it turned out that they became an innovator. Yeah. So it's important to look through some of those ideas and understand where some of the principles came from. And as someone who's studying this, and especially as you've launched this and you've it sounds like you've spoken to a lot of your users, have you found that there is a disconnect or a similarity between the theory of innovation that you learn about and how it's put into practice within businesses or by individuals?
I mean, of course, in theory, everything seems kind of easier, right? And then you have your own company and you're like, oh fuck, and we forgot to be innovative somehow, or after some time you realize competitors are far ahead and you thought you were very innovative, but you actually didn't even apply concepts from the theory. So I think it's something that you also always have to remind yourself, right? Like, what process would you actually need, and not just, sometimes it's good also to just go out and do something, but sometimes it's really also good to think about, okay, where do I want to go and what kind of tools can help me on that way? What steps do I need? As you said, maybe there's specific templates already that can help me a lot to find out about specific aspects of my idea, or to experiment and build prototypes, or to go out and talk to customers. There's a lot of stuff out there already, so you don't have to invent all of it yourself, right? You can get a lot of help. And that's also really the idea of really good innovation in itself. It's not like we're innovating that much content ourselves, but it's more like we're just helping people to find stuff that they might find useful. And we're trying to give them some templates, try to explain them how to use them.
And I mean, ultimately, it's just a very specific, I don't want to say a search engine, but it's a specific sort of tool set for those that are looking to do or take a specific action. And actually, I saw an email because I subscribe to your, I guess, newsletters, around the emails that go out and sporadically. And the email that came through yesterday or the day before was all around digital transformation. And even sort of segmenting them into these specific subsections is really helpful, because within legal, which is a large part of this audience, and within businesses, digital transformation has become a very important strategy. And it's one that certainly isn't new and seems to go in, cyclical motions, where there's a lot of interest, then maybe it dies down a little bit, something happens and it comes back into focus. So there looking through some of the videos that are posted around that, both including successful examples of that, as well as myths around what digital transformation is or isn't, was really helpful to review and very timely, actually, as I was thinking about this conversation.
Yeah. That's also a good point, right? Like oftentimes you feel like you hear digital transformation and you're like, of course, you've heard it a million times and you're like, okay, I know what it is, but then what is it actually and how can you actually implement it and why do some companies just fail to implement it? So that's really, I think it's really helpful to also learn about these cases, these examples, and know about, okay, maybe it's not just about implementing a new IT system, but maybe it's much more than that.
Yeah. And so how do you see, so let's say I stumble across your site accidentally or after listening to this, how do you envision in your perfect, design of this website for it to be used? What would be the, if as you were hearing user stories, what would be the perfect story for you? How people use the website?
You mean when somebody comes on the website?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I think if somebody just Googles, and it's like, so I really need a tool for this, or I really need a template for this, or what about examples about open innovation or something? And then they would find our website and they would find this article very helpful. And then they come to the front page as well after checking out that tool or article.
Right.
And then you would also see the innovator quiz, right, which can help you a bit at least to maybe get a better understanding of what you need, and get some more suggestions. And then I think it's really also just about browsing and being like, oh, the topic of incremental innovation is also something interesting to me. What do they have there? And then just going through the list and looking what is appealing to me and what can help me further. And we're also really trying to build a community around that, right, where people can help each other. So we have a Slack channel, and one of our main goals is to bring people onto that Slack channel. We have around 45 people now. I mean, we just started it like months ago. And so, yeah, if people then also, after checking out these resources, go on the Slack channel, join there, and there, we start to get it going. But if people then also have discussions there about what helped them, and people can just build a community around how to innovate and what kind of tools they prefer.
Yeah. And I think one of the things and certainly how I started looking at this, especially because I was reading a book that professed the idea. The book is called The Innovation Stack. It's one of the co-founders of Square that writes the book. And for his thesis is that people should basically copy as much as possible when they're trying to innovate, and only because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Only when you come to a problem that hasn't been solved before, you focus on innovating and creating a new solution. And the innovation stack is essentially, you go through, you try and solve a problem, and instead of solving it, at least in the short term, you're ending up coming against even more problems you need to be able to solve, right? So for them, as they were coming up with Square, they were like, we need to create something so small that fits into the headphone jack of an iPhone when they used to have them. And then they realized, now it needs to be so light. So they had to look at new materials. Then they realized we need to look at insurance. We had to look at processing and all of these other problems they had to then solve, right? So that becomes your stack of innovation and really sets you apart from anyone else who may have just done one of those things. And the site was quite useful because you can go and look at examples where something like that has been done before. Not that specific, but certainly a lot of the stories that are there, whether it's about Lego, whether it's about, an interview on HBR or something else. So you can go and learn from that and say, great, here are 3 things out of 5 that I needed to do. Someone's done that, so I can implement that in real life. And the other 2, let's problem solve. And then you can use the templates and the tools to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, often if you hear or see one example about something, right, and then you see an example about something else, and then maybe you can even think of ways how to combine these things, and you might even come up with completely new business models.
Yeah.
Like, that's also, I think that's a very interesting way of thinking about innovation. Often people talk about thinking out of the box, right? Like thinking very crazy and creative. Right. But oftentimes innovation is also just about thinking inside a box and combining things kind of inside certain frames. So being like, okay, those are my restrictions. What is my knowledge? What can I combine with each other to innovate, to improve things?
Yeah, and that's a very engineer-centric mindset, to take your very limited set of resources and still come up with a unique solution.
But
Yeah,
it's also a very entrepreneurial approach, right? Like if you don't have a lot of stuff and you're just like, okay, I want to solve this problem, but what do I actually have and how can I combine existing things to create something new, basically?
And what's your, so actually before we talk about what you want to sort of, where you want to take this, I'm curious. So you launched this on Product Hunt, and for anyone who doesn't know what Product Hunt is, it's a site that's been around for a few years now, where people launch new products, as the name suggests, but often they are either real physical products, digital products, or ideas and concepts. And then a large community votes on them, and it essentially has helped to kickstart many businesses, because there's a lot of attention that gets that's shown there. And you guys had, a very successful launch, I would say, on there. What was that process like? Why did you decide to launch it on that platform? And how did you prep for that? Because I sadly spent a day every day. I spent an hour on Product Hunt probably, and there's hundreds of launches on there. Some get thousands and thousands of votes, and some get 2. So what helped you sort of be so popular on there?
So I think you are actually exactly then one of the people that we targeted, or anyway, the reason why we went to Product Hunt in the first place, because it's really a platform where there's the people that you would call kind of early adopters, right? People who are excited about new products, who might be a bit geeky about new products, and who are not just following the mainstream and being like, when something is super successful, oh, I'll try it as well, but who are really like, oh, this seems cool, and they want to put their own time and effort into researching for new cool things. So it's really a good platform to kind of test if people like what you do or if they don't. It's very honest, and you see directly if it's gonna not good at all. So we just engaged there with the community. Also got a lot of feedback along the way, right? You can also, there's groups there where you can post your prototypes and be like, hey guys, what do you think about this or that? And then you help out some other people, you give reviews, or you help them on their website and they check out your website. So it's a very collaborative way kind of to evolve your product. So there was also a reason. And then it's also like there's a big part of the Product Hunt communities, especially in the West Coast area of the US. And anyway, with the whole Silicon Valley, that's a very innovation hub. So it's a good place to have your first kind of customers, or at least users in our case.
So how do you find, actually on that, how do you find, especially since you're in Denmark now, and Denmark is certainly, as I've spoken to a couple of individuals, big in design, and there's some great companies coming out of there, and generally sort of the Nordics region. How do you find the community around sort of innovation, technology, and coming up with new ideas to be different to something like the West Coast, whether you've spoken to individuals there or just a perception?
Yes, it's really a very kind of innovative vibe here, I would say, in Copenhagen especially. There's a lot of startup accelerators, there's a lot of startups, there's a big community, a lot going on. Maybe the difference to like US West Coast, maybe there it's even, everything is just bigger there, right? So it's like they scale up way more quickly. Maybe here it's more about like they keep it a bit smaller, but therefore it's just people's own business and they try to grow it themselves without going to a venture capitalist directly and trying to get a unicorn status. But there's definitely some cool ideas here, and especially around topics of like sustainability. There's really a lot of startups here, a lot of cool things going on also. So it's a good place to be around, and definitely we still want to also get a bit more into the community here. Of course, through the university, we got some touch points there, but so far we're mainly interacting with users actually in the US, or more than here.
Yeah, yeah, and certainly I think the startup scene is very much thriving, and there are a lot lot of startup hubs and incubators that are sort of within there, and certainly within Europe, it's one of the top destinations as you're a startup for a number of
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it also depends very much. In Europe, there's a lot of different places, right? I'm from Switzerland originally, and Zurich is a great place, but it's also very much like finance based. And Copenhagen is a very startup-y place, very entrepreneurial atmosphere.
Yeah, there's a lot more character across the entirety of of Europe, to be honest, and you can sort of find a nice city or a country that suits your vibe for sure.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
definitely true.
So in the last couple of minutes, I am curious. What's your plan for the website? What do you want to do with it? And I didn't prep you for this at all, so I don't know if you have any plans yet. You've just launched it, but how do you see it growing? What do what would you class as sort of successful as you measure the use of the
Yeah.
site, of the tools, and so on?
So ideally, it would cut into some kind of, it would develop itself further. So far we are searching for good innovation resources and posting them and doing a lot of the work ourselves, which is great. But then at some point we would really like to grow the community to a place where people submit their own resources that they like, their own stories, their own tools that they prefer, and that there's also a lot more engagement, like people liking content, so you can actually see like, okay, what is content that is good, what is content that people prefer. So it also gives a way another user experience, right? Because you also have this kind of social part in it. So this is definitely a direction we want to go to. And yeah, also just in general, of course, growing in numbers of user, letting people know about it, and getting bigger in terms of what we can offer people. Like we just try to offer them value, and then we hope that people like it, and that at some point, of course, it would also be the idea to turn it into some business, and either base it on advertising revenue, or maybe collaborate with some of the tools that we promote there. So there's some different business opportunities in that as well, of course.
It's really cool because you get to hopefully put some of the principles that you talk about into practice as you develop. And it sounds like you're quite an early stage of your journey still, which is fantastic. And I think I like the resource, and part of the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because within the business context, we talk a lot about innovation, and it's important, but it's absolutely misunderstood. And just to me, as people look to educate themselves, and that could be business leaders that have true innovators that know exactly what they're talking about in their teams, or you could be one of the innovators accidentally or otherwise. You should know some of the concepts behind this. So you should understand what is the difference between an open innovation and incremental innovation, disruptive innovation, as well as understanding, what is a business model mean? What do people mean when they talk about design thinking or innovation labs or blue ocean strategies and things of that nature?
Sure. And I mean, especially when it comes to concepts like open innovation, I think it's also very important, the whole legal aspect, right? Because especially with open innovation, the whole question of IP protection and how do you license and what kind of agreements do you have between companies, it's a very big part of innovation. So it's not just about being creative and brainstorming some cool ideas, but in the end, it's really also about implementing those ideas, and about how can you collaborate, how can you use that idea in a meaningful way.
And I think the understanding how do you actually manage those ideas. I have this sort of concept of an innovation pipeline, but how do you actually manage those ideas across your entire team, right? Because if you have a successful collaboration session, whether it's an ideation, design thinking workshop, something else, hopefully you end up with hundreds and hundreds of ideas across multiple people, and likely you will only act on one or two. most instances, you shouldn't just throw the others away. How do you actually keep them and evaluate them and see if there is some use for them in the future or somewhere else? And especially within legal, because it's such a service heavy industry, there are plenty of learnings to have had, especially from the finance and the fintech sector, on how do you actually productize a service, and how do you think about, innovating on those sort of services so they add more value, kind of like what you're doing with your side. How do they add more value to your customers? And you can perhaps then turn that into a business opportunity later down the line in a completely different way.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And I mean, especially with something like legal service, right? You're always in touch with customers. You always talk to people. So if the company then has some kind of way to store all of this data and make sense of it, you can make a lot of money just out of new business ideas from that.
Yep, absolutely. So Robin, it was wonderful speaking to you. For everyone else listening, please go check out reallygoodinnovation.com. It is certainly a great place to learn and to discover a lot of tools that you probably haven't come across before. And it's worth sort of investigating if you are in the innovation space, or you have individuals in the innovation space if you're a leader. And Robin, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. And even if you're not directly in the innovation space, I think everybody can benefit from looking through those examples and sometimes thinking, how can you do things in a different way?
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.